I've admitted many times on the channel before that I'm basically a Honda fanboy, and by Honda fanboy, I mean someone who actually enjoys owning and driving Hondas. Not someone who thinks that Tokyo Drift is the good one and enjoys throwing around internet knowledge of B-Series and K-Series engines, even though he drives a Saturn.
Just shut up. Because
of my obvious Honda bias, I've always been kind of pulling for Acura. I'll maintain until the day I die that the second generation Acura Legend sedan is one of the best looking premium luxury sedans of all time, and that the Acura RSX Type S is woefully underappreciated and lives in the shadow of the legendary Integra. The third generation Acura TL sedan was also pretty fantastic, and the Acura MDX has been one of the best-selling luxury SUVs of all time. But what about now? What about when the line between sort of regular mainstream vehicles, premium vehicles, and luxury vehicles is blurrier than the air around a Subaru Car Club meet?
That's it?
Does the Acura MDX still have what it takes to be sort of the default choice for upwardly mobile, not yet divorced parents? Or has it been replaced by things like the Kia Telluride, the Buick Enclave Avenir, and the Infiniti I'm sorry, I couldn't even finish that statement. What's going on, everyone? Jax here, and today I've got the 2022 Acura MDX A-Spec. Obviously, the first thing you notice about this all-new MDX is its exterior styling, which I think is pretty great and was sort of universally loved by everybody in my family, including the notoriously picky teenager. The MDX never looked bad before. It was certainly one of the least aesthetically destroyed models during Acura's notorious beak phase. But this new MDX sort of stretches the sheet metal a little bit more, creases it here and there, and generally just makes the SUV look tauter and more athletic, especially in this really good-looking A-Spec trim with these 20-inch wheels. The all-LED exterior lighting certainly keeps with the Acura MDX's sort of premium pretensions, even though it might not quite have the curb appeal of something like the Kia Telluride. It's certainly better looking than the leftover Easter egg that's the Buick Enclave, or the slowly melting bar of soap at the bottom of your shower, which is the Infiniti QX60. But is it enough? Well, yes and no. The MDX certainly looks good, but it sort of lacks that wow factor that brands like Genesis are infusing into their upcoming SUVs. The Genesis GV80 is a statement piece. It's a stylistic flag planted in the ground, sort of declaring Genesis's arrival. The MDX, even in A-Spec trim, isn't that, but it certainly would benefit from being that, especially in such a crowded field. And the same is true when you pop the hood. The Acura MDX is powered by Acura's venerable 3.5-liter V6, making 290 horsepower and 267 pound-feet of torque, running through a 10-speed automatic transmission and being distributed to all four wheels via Acura's super handling all-wheel drive. There's nothing inherently wrong with this powertrain. The V6 is typical Acura. It's smooth, it's revvy, and it's very pleasant to listen to, but it's not anything special. A turbocharged 3-liter making over 350 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque is supposedly going to motivate the upcoming Type S MDX. That's right, there's going to be an MDX Type S. But personally, I think Acura needs a bit more of a hierarchy in MDX trims here. Maybe this could be sort of like the base engine, and then it could have a more aggressive tune in A-Spec trim, maybe giving it another 20 to 30 horsepower. And then at the top of the hierarchy, you have the Type S, making over 350 in both measurements. However, I'm not exactly the intended consumer here. I'm a knuckle-dragging, mouth-breathing enthusiast, so of course I would ask for more power out of an almost 300 horsepower engine. And it's important when reviewing a family car that you have a more family perspective, especially coming from someone who loves mid-size and large SUVs more than I ever could.
I'm just gonna, spoiler alert, I really love this car. I thought that I would always love like a really big car, like I drove a Suburban and I wanted a Tahoe, and I told my husband I'm never gonna accept anything other than a ginormous car. But I really like this car. So it had a lot of work to do to overcome my initial just bias because it's little. But man, I love it. I love the way it drives. I feel like I'm a race car driver, basically, with how well it handles. The brakes were a little bit, took me to get used to, because it's like the complete opposite of the car I currently drive, my giant Suburban. So that just took me a little bit. They're a little bouncy, spongy. I don't know what's the car word for it, but I'm getting used to them. So it's not like a reason I would not buy the car. All the technology, like the little thing here that shows me how close the car in front of me is. I love that. It looks like I'm driving on a little, it's a cute little graphic. When I go off in my lane, which doesn't often happen, but when it does, it shakes the wheel and wakes me up. Not that I'm asleep, but if you were. And that's very intuitive. The automatic brights are really good and they turn off on time. It does shut off a little quicker than I would like the engine, when you're at a stoplight, it shuts off on me, which is great, but it also does it to me at stop signs, which I do come to a complete stop. He makes fun of me. I've had a lot of police encounters about it. But anyway, it shuts off then, which I guess is the one thing I'd like. Just seems like a little much. But other than that, the cup holders are nice. The little car charger is nice. I haven't quite figured out all the technology. I'm not gonna lie. It's a little more, the little mouse paddy thing. I don't know what that's called. Took me a little while to get used to it. I still haven't figured out how to actually listen to just the radio. But that's probably a user problem, not a car problem. The seats are super comfortable. I love the red interior, which I wasn't sure. It's a little sporty, but it makes me feel sporty spice or something in here. There's a little thing here, and I was like, what is that? And my teenager was like, Mom, duh, it's a thing for it's like a hand rest, a wrist rest while you're using the mouse pad. That's fancy. I love the cup holders. They're kind of two different sizes. The sunroof, that's the entire length of the car. We haven't shut it at all because it's so fun with all the sun that comes in. It's beautiful. The back seat is pretty roomy. The other day I'm almost 5'9", so pretty tall. My daughter is 6'1", volleyball player, but she sat right behind me. So when would you ever have more tall people than that straight behind each other? So it's not a ton of, not a ton of room, but it was enough. And there's lots of cargo space when you have the third row down. Now, I haven't put the third row up. Well, I haven't put the third row up, honey.
Because we don't have more than 2 kids.
Because we don't have more than 2 kids, so we have no need for that right now. But with the third row down, there's tons of cargo space back there, which is pretty awesome. My kids don't ever want to drive in my real car anymore. So they're like, let's take the fun car. So this is the fun, cool car, and my car is not anymore, but shout out to my 2012 Suburban. But I just love it. It's got cooled seats, it's got heated seats. It, like I said, it drives like I'm on the Nürburgring or something. Is that a thing?
Yes.
Like it's like super smooth. Does it make sense?
Can't believe you know the name of that.
Thank you. Well, it's because you made me watch Top Gear all those years.
That's right.
Like I just feel like really smooth, like it takes the curves really well. Does that make sense? So a novice like me feels pretty cool. I think all the displays are really lovely. So like, subscribe, like ring the bell, and maybe if we get enough likes on this video, he'll buy me one. Thoughts? I do drive a 2012 Suburban.
I would, you know.
I'm just saying. All right, guys, let's do it. Let's make it up. And Mama needs a new car. I mean,
what do you think? Like, say, like, compared to
like
the Telluride is 48,000. This is 58,000, and then the Tahoe you liked was 68,000.
okay, well, you can't really compare it to the Tahoe because the Tahoe is like so much bigger. So for a large SUV, obviously I like the Tahoe because that's just my jam. For a small SUV, now it has been quite a while since
This is not a small SUV.
It's not?
No.
Well, I drive a Suburban, so
Yeah,
it is. What is a large SUV? A mid-size SUV?
A large mid-size SUV.
Okay.
I mean, it's a 3-row crossover.
Yeah, but I wouldn't compare it to a Tahoe.
Well, no, but that's a ginormous SUV.
You're a ginormous SUV. Okay, back to me. He likes to interrupt. Oh, I haven't had the Telluride. That was been many, many months ago, right? Like a year ago? Over a year ago?
Yeah, when it first came out.
So it's hard for me to compare because I just can't wait. But I think the price difference comes in like the exoticness of the Acura. Does that make sense? Like, and maybe this one just feels more exotic because of like red and black interior. Like, but maybe it's like the red and black, like, and the leather feels like nicer. I do think the seats feel nicer. I feel like I'm in a sports car with like, I don't know, it just feels like very comfy and cozy, and I'm like sitting kind of down in it, which I really like. I can see why it is more expensive than the Telluride. I can. Did the Telluride have the giant sunroof?
I think you can get it.
Yeah, but I don't think it was like this big. I don't know. But so I feel like those are two different things. So like, I do think you're paying a little extra for that like cool factor.
Paying
Which
10 grand extra.
okay, it's a little extra. I'm sure there's like other things like, is the engine better?
We're teachers. 10 grand for us is our whole paycheck.
I know, that's why y'all need to like this video, and maybe he'll get me a new car. I do feel like I've earned it, honey. I've been driving my car for 9 years. Just saying. And I do these videos for free. Like a lot, cheap labor here. Yeah, I should get some kind of kickback, but I don't. Okay, so the other thing I just thought about is that one thing I really like about this car, and this, I guess, this is another reason I think it's more expensive and why I would probably put it a little above the Telluride maybe, is that I was very impressed because usually when you get cars, I feel like it's either a car for you or a car for me. There's not many cars that like we both love. And I feel like this is a car that's like a car for him, like a car guy, and a car for me who is not a car girl, but just likes driving like fun, nice cars. Because it just feels like, do you know what I'm saying? Like I feel like the Telluride is more like a car for me. And like if he had to drive it, he would, but it wouldn't be like a car he would pick out. But I feel like this is a car that like you would buy for yourself and you would buy for me. And if you're a family like our family where like we have like my car is like the family car, but like if we're places where we're going together, we're both like he would probably drive it instead of me or whatever. I feel like this is a good kind of like compromise car where it's like a car that your wife would love to drive and a car that the husband would love to drive, or the wives or the husbands or whoever, but like everybody, like whether you're a car person or not, I think you like it. Does that make sense? Like I love it. It's just nice and easy and smooth and fun to drive, but also like it's got these like flappy paddle gear guys that like I use all the time. But like he might use it sometimes if he wants to like drive like me. But and it just looks like a car person's car. Does that make sense? And I really like that about it because like I didn't think it was going to be a car for me, but it actually is.
Before we get into my thoughts on the way the MDX drives, and since all my girls tended to like this red and black sanctuary that is the MDX's interior, let's sort of focus on the interior for a second. Let me start by saying that I generally really like this interior. It's very functional, it's easy to navigate, and I really like the way it looks in this color scheme, to be honest. Sure, you know, piano black is kind of worse than a radish sandwich.
It's true.
But the metal and fake metal accents look really nice. And the 12.3-inch infotainment display at the top of the dash is bright and crisp, and the backup camera is nice in HD. Although for 58 grand, it should probably have a surround view camera, but the infotainment screen is pretty great. Oh, and about that infotainment control.
auto journalists, enough with complaining about the trackpad. Yes, early implementations were awful. Yes, Lexus's system is still pretty much trash. But I actually like this system. I said it back when we had the Acura RDX A-Spec to test. Being able to control the screen without taking your eyes completely off the road makes so much sense. A touch screen requires you to look away in most cases, because the surface is a smooth void where tactile functions get lost in a sea of sameness, leading to errant presses, which leads to more distractions, which leads to death. Acura's system is just better, but Lexus's year still sucks.
Anyway, the big wow factor here is the 16-speaker ELS 3D audio system, which is just incredible. I know absolutely nothing about audio fidelity, but from the highest of the highs to the lowest of the low high school parking lot subwoofer bass, the dynamic range from this system is just unbelievable. I threw on some tracks from Odessa on my Spotify because I secretly want to be Sam Colder, don't we all? And I was instantly transported into a YouTube travel cinematic video that we all secretly want to make, like Sam Colder, but we can't because he's a lot more talented and better looking. Maybe I can try to be like Sam Newton. And that audio system is also helped by the fact that the MDX is actually really quiet inside. It's very quiet at highway speeds. I was really impressed. Not that I was expecting it not to be quiet, but that's not exactly Acura's thing that they brag about. It's like Buick's thing that they brag about. But the MDX was very quiet, very serene inside. The tech in general is just pretty fantastic, and in typical Acura fashion, it all just works. The adaptive cruise control from Acura is especially nice. The graphics in the driver instrument display are really slick, and it's kind of a cool representation of where you are versus the car in front of you. Dare I say, almost a little Tesla-ish in the way that it looks. It's a really cool display. And Acura's comprehensive suite of safety features called Acura Watch, because of course it is, always has your back. If there's a downside for our tallish family, it's just an outright space. Even though this MDX is larger than the model it replaces, and it's bigger in almost every single exterior and interior dimension, its utility is still somewhat compromised by its style. This new for 22 model swallows just 16 cubic feet of cargo behind its third row, and only 39 cubic feet of cargo behind its second row. Does that sound familiar to you? Because it should if you've watched this channel, because the Mazda CX-9, another SUV that I really love but is too small for our family, has almost identical interior measurements. Both of my girls found second row legroom to be kind of just adequate when sitting behind me and Mrs. Jax. Now, in case you're new here, I say this a lot, I am 6'6", and Mrs. Jax is 5'9", but really enjoys stretching those legs all the way out when she's sitting in the passenger seat. So that doesn't leave a ton of room for my 6'1" tall high school volleyball player and my 5'4" fifth grader. Yes, she's 5'4" and she's in 5th grade. Both of them complained about being a little cramped in the second row. And Hallie, my 5'4" fifth grader, said the third row was only passable to make it to Atlanta to the volleyball tournaments this weekend. So she wasn't a huge fan of the third row. But who cares about space when you're the one in the driver's seat? Am I right? Well, to be honest with you, interior space isn't my only sort of complaint when it comes to the MDX. So here we are in the 2022 Acura MDX. And right away, I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with the way this vehicle drives, because it's kind of hit or miss for me, to be honest with you. There's things that I really like about it, and then there's things that I kinda don't fully understand. Like the steering, for example. This is in normal mode right now, the sort of default setting, and it's a little on the light side. It's fairly accurate, but to be honest with you, to feel kind of more athletic, the way the sort of MDX has been kind of marketed, I ran it in sport mode most of the time, which gave it a little bit of a firmer kind of feel and a little bit heavier, you know, not necessarily a ton of feedback, but a little bit heavier in a sporty way. However, I felt as though there was a little bit of kind of a dead spot on center, even in sport mode, and that doesn't seem very characteristic of what I would come to expect from Acura, especially in, you know, this sort of brand new model. Now, most people aren't gonna really be bent out of shape about that because this car is gonna be doing commuter duty. But as an enthusiast, I kind of want sport mode to give me a little bit more. I do, however, like the steering wheel. Now we're on the handling road, and you see one of my other complaints with the MDX is sort of the ride. It's pretty busy. It's comfortable, and on a highway, it's extremely smooth. On an interstate, we've been going back and forth to Atlanta all weekend because Ella had a huge volleyball tournament. So this car has done the trip about 45 minutes into and out of Atlanta 6 times, and it handles those duties incredibly well. But on these sort of suburban back roads, where the road quality and texture is suspicious at best, it's not always great. Here comes the big bump. And it's good, but I feel like there's a little bit of a secondary roll there after the big bump. And the thing is, this car doesn't really have adaptive dampers. It doesn't really change whether you're in sport mode, normal mode, or comfort mode. What really changes is the throttle, transmission, mapping, the steering feel, stuff like that. So the mode doesn't really sort of sort out the ride quality. It's always on the softer side. I really do like this steering wheel though. The steering wheel feels fantastic. The flat bottom looks cool. It definitely matches the A-Spec look of the MDX, which I think looks pretty great in this trim, to be honest with you. The seats also look pretty awesome in this sort of red and black color scheme. They're supportive, they've got some bolstering, but all of that kind of speaks to this like level of performance that you want the MDX to have, but it doesn't necessarily deliver on. And the same is true with some of the other dynamic characteristics, like the brakes, like the automatic transmission. The 10-speed automatic does an awesome job in just sort of daily normal driving. I think it's fine. But when you put it in sport mode and you kind of stomp on it, it's sometimes reluctant to kick down, and that seems kind of absurd. I mean, yes, you can use the paddles here, but like, why isn't the transmission mapping sort of going, oh, you're in sport mode, you want to kind of play around, let me knock it down a couple gears, let's go. And it's a little slow to respond, which again, doesn't really fit what I think this sort of vehicle is being marketed as, this kind of like athletic crossover vehicle. And I mentioned the brakes, and I hate to say this, but the brakes are dynamically by far the worst part of the car. They are just downright squishy. The pedal feels terrible on the brakes. Now the braking force, the braking power, the actual brakes themselves work incredibly well. We got cut off in traffic going to volleyball this weekend, and the MDX stopped very quickly. Like I had no doubt, I had no concern about the MDX's ability to stop. But the pedal feel it's like stepping on an old pool float at the end of summer that you have to deflate. It is not confidence inspiring. And that doesn't matter who you are. Mrs. Jax mentioned the same thing. And like I said, this is very hot or cold. All of that is a bit of a shame because here's the thing. This is an all-new platform and it feels really good. It feels like it's being held back. It corners relatively flat. It's rigid, it's quiet in here. It feels like it has more to give. The super handling all-wheel drive is awesome. That should be like the leading thing that Acura markets because super handling all-wheel drive is a fantastic system. And the chassis feels like light. It feels like it could play. Come on, Acura, let it off the leash. Let's get nuts.
Come on, let's get nuts.
Are you holding out for the upcoming Type S, which is supposed to have over 350 horsepower and is sort of being marketed as like a range topper? That is totally fine, and I get it, it makes sense. However, this is the A-Spec, which to me, if it's not Type S, it should be like a rung below Type S. Like maybe have the Type S's athletic capability, but with just a slightly better tune on this engine, which by the way, this V6, which is basically a carryover, is buttery smooth. And even though it could be more powerful with the forced induction like that's coming on the Type S turbocharged 6-cylinder, I think 3-liter V6, it's still a great engine. This 3.5-liter V6 is a great engine and it's powerful enough. I really don't have any complaints about the power of this engine. My main complaint is in the chassis. Actually, no, scratch that. My main complaint is the deployment of the chassis capabilities because I feel like this chassis is great. I feel like this car could really handle Like be like surprisingly like one of those like Motor Trend tests where they're like, what? Whoa, can you believe it? Kind of things. Like I really feel like this car has more to give because in just regular driving like this, it feels smooth, confident, poised, but these like details, this disgusting wet biscuit brake pedal and this heavy but you know kind of numb on center sport steering, it just feels a little, I don't know, not half-baked because it's an Acura, and I would never say that an Acura is half-baked because this car is beautiful inside, it's well put together, it's quiet, like I said, it's everything you want it to be. But it feels neutered, like it's being prevented from being all it could be. And it kind of bums me out a little bit. From a driving standpoint, I mean, there's pros and cons about this vehicle in general. We've talked about some, and I'm about to talk about some others. But from a dynamic standpoint, this car feels like it could be more. It's certainly good enough. And for schlepping the kids to practice in school and stuff like that, it's gonna make people perfectly happy. In fact, I would dare say it will make most people happy, and it's probably the best MDX ever, and that's unquestionable. It's just a evolution of an already good car. But I think this could have been something really eye-opening. I hope they make those changes for the Type S. I hope that the Type S version of this is a little crazy. Like just a little like crazy, you know, because I want it to be. I feel like it could be. I feel like I could get into this car and it's a sleeper, you know? Like it's a good looking, handsome SUV, but like it doesn't draw too much attention to itself. But you could kind of like surprise somebody in like a Mercedes or a BMW. I want this to be what it can be. And here's the bottom line in a segment like this. This MDX drives really well, but in a segment as cutthroat as this premium segment has become, a segment where the lines between your sort of everyday normal brands and transportation options and premium options and luxury options are getting blurred. And for your 50 to 60 grand, there is a world of choices. It's gotta be better than good. So, should you buy an Acura MDX, especially in this very excellent looking A-Spec trim with the black accents and dark 20-inch wheels? Well, to be honest with you, the answer's a lot more complicated than it used to be. Not long ago, I would have said a resounding yes. There just isn't another premium vehicle with sort of the generalized excellence and all-around goodness as the MDX. Most people apparently agreed with that sentiment because the MDX has always been a strong seller, and early sales figures for this 2022 model actually are sort of breaking MDX sales records. So clearly your sort of average MDX buyer finds this to be a compelling package. But times, they are a-changin'. And a similarly spec'd Kia Telluride, assuming you can find one at cost and not woefully marked up by some stupid dealer, is around 48 grand, which makes it $10,000 cheaper than this 58 grand Acura MDX that you see behind me. The Mazda CX-9, which drives better than this Acura MDX, also costs 48 grand compared to the MDX's 58. And it's roughly the same size as the MDX, even though it lacks some of the MDX's sort of techno wow features. Like in the CX-9, you get adaptive cruise control that works pretty darn good, but in the MDX, you get that really slick, awesome adaptive cruise control system with kind of the cool graphics in the driver's display. So, you know, is that worth $10,000? No, but it's cool. The Buick Enclave Avenir, which drives much worse than the MDX, but is much, much bigger than the MDX, costs about the same as the MDX. And the sexy elephant in the room,
That doesn't make sense.
the Genesis GV80 can be spec'd almost identically to the MDX for around $60,000, and it has the added benefit of looking like a baby Bentley Bentayga. So what would I do? Well, I personally can't wait to get behind the wheel of the GV80, but I haven't yet, so I can't for sure say that's kind of the better route or the better option. I do prefer the MDX to the Buick Enclave Avenir, and I would probably also take it over my beloved CX-9, just because it's pretty darn nice. It's got that extra tech, and I think it uses its interior measurements a little more efficiently than the Mazda does. But if I'm being completely honest with you guys, and I always try to be, because what else is the point of coming here? I would probably take a slightly more expensive Chevy Tahoe, trade some of the MDX's techno wow features, and maybe even that ELS audio system for the Tahoe's ginormous amount of space. I know Mrs. Jax agrees. She absolutely loves the Chevy Tahoe. And even though you could argue that we're not exactly comparing apples to apples here, I think when you're looking at cars and you're making a buying decision as sort of monumental as buying a car, it doesn't matter how rich you are, buying a car is an expensive proposition. You have to consider how that vehicle might fit in sort of your lifestyle. And for a family as tall as ours, the Chevy Tahoe would just fit us, quite literally, a bit better. Guys, thanks so much for watching. Like I said, I always try to bring sort of the honest truth to you guys. And the fact is the Acura MDX is an excellent car. It is a wonderful all-around sort of family hauler. But your family's needs should be your kind of #1 priority when buying a car. And so I try to look at these cars from sort of an objective standpoint, but also being a tall family, I want to sort of bring that kind of realistic perspective. Like if I were actually going to plunk down my own money on one of these cars, what would I be considering? What would I buy? I find that, you know, a lot of people appreciate that perspective, and I hope it brings you like a little bit of extra value. Maybe your family is totally of average height. That's not a dig, I'm just saying, and the MDX would be absolutely perfect for you. If so, I don't think you'd be disappointed. For me, I'd trade some of that tech, a little bit of that interior quality for a Tahoe just to get that extra size and space. As always, I appreciate the views. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks for being part of this community. If you found this video useful, please consider giving it a like. And if you'd like to stick around and kind of come on this car enthusiast reviewing journey with me, consider subscribing to the channel. I would really appreciate it. As always, ride safe and drive safe, and I will catch you in the next video. Peace. Again, sounds pretty good, whatever it is. Okay, now it's not as helpful, whatever you are. I'm sure it's a Harley rider, because it's always a Harley rider. All right, there we go. Harley rider. Fade into the distance. Hey, how are you? Oh, no worries. It's a rough sounding motorcycle, bro. Of course you're pulling in the park. Probably to revel in your loneliness because your bike sounds like trash. Also, that truck's tires are insanely loud.